I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. Tom, I'm going to let you go ahead and sort of head this up.
All right. Sounds great. And so, again, this is kind of a shout out to the folks out there. This all came together as a result of, just honestly, just me kind of having the courage to talk to both a family member and a neighbor about my encounter. And had no idea that anybody had that in my circle of friends and family had their own encounters with these. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to do a quick introduction to Rich. He's my neighbor, and he actually had an encounter that was extremely interesting. We talked about it, I think, last summer. And in that encounter, I think he may have a question for you. So probably I'll hand it off to Rich. And then when he's done, we'll bring Sam in.
Sounds good.
Okay, guys. Well, here's my encounter. It happened about 15 years ago out of a little northeast of a little town called Chenault, Oregon, in the Central Oregon Cascades. And it was a late night on our way back from camping, pitch black outside, no moon, overcast. We were driving down a Plummy Dust Road, and about 30 yards to my left, I see these two glowing about the same color as a lighter, a little bigger than a silver dollar, and about a 5-inch spread between both these objects. And my lights were on these things, and I'm going, who in the world would put reflectors up that high? These things are probably 8-9 feet in the air. So I'm just thinking to myself, I had 3 buddies in the back of the truck sitting on a bench. We're on our way back from a hunting trip. And I'm thinking, I'm watching this thing, and it's just, after my lights are past it, they're still lit up. They're bright, really bright. And I'm going, what in the world is that? As I'm driving past it, this thing is moving and watching me as I'm driving by. Now, I don't want to tell my buddies in the back truck. They're going to think I'm crazy. What am I looking at? After driving past about 20 yards, I hear one of my buddies in the back go, what the F was that? And I go, thank God, you guys seen it too. But it was not all of us seen it. There was 4 of us. 1 guy was sleeping. 3 of us seen it. 1 guy wanted to turn around and go back, and it made the hair stand up in my arms. I did not want to go back. Now, I couldn't see any silhouette of the body. I had just seen 2 big, bright eyes. Now, I'm not sure if anybody else has encountered the same situation I went through, but I know that 4 of us had our own tents, and that night we all slept in the same tent.
Hey, Rich, what color were their eyes?
I was like a bright orange, yellowish orange, really bright.
Rich, and we talked about this a little bit, but what was the distance away from your truck? And was the window rolled up, down?
The window was down, and it was about 20 yards out from the road.
Okay. And did you think they were eyes when you first saw them, or you just kind of wondering what?
No, when I first saw them, I thought they were some kind of reflectors that the U.S. Forest put out there for some reason, but it wasn't making sense why they were so high in the air. Okay. And when you and I talked, you had said that as you drove on, what did the eyes do then as you passed? I mean, did they change? They rotated. They moved as I moved, like eye-to-eye contact.
Wow. Okay. And the other question I had was, okay, so they moved. Did they, when your headlights were, I don't know if your headlights had played any role in this, but when you went past, was there any change in the intensity of the color?
No, there was not. No change at all.
And how high off the ground do you think they were, if you had to
I
estimate?
would say 7 to 8 feet high.
Wow.
Hey, Rich, what time of year was this?
This was in end of August, beginning of September, beginning of archery season here in Oregon.
And you recall what time it was, roughly?
It was late. It was probably 10 in the evening.
Now, was this close to any, farms or anything where there were livestock or domestic animals, or was it out?
There's lots of it's open, what they call open country, where they can have cattle run around up there. So yeah, there's cows.
Kind of a free range
like
type area.
Cows. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Any you ever hear of anything like this in the area? Anybody else ever see anything around there?
Nobody that I know of.
Have you been out there before, Rich, in this area?
But we've hunted that area for previous to that probably 15 years before that encounter.
Okay. And you're telling me that it was it was definitely the road wasn't even paved. It was just a very rural area, right?
Yeah. There's several meadows up in this area, probably within a mile of each other where these ranchers keep their cattle. And unless you really know the area, you won't be able to find this area.
So, okay. And what kind of struck me was it's a little bit different, but Will, you remember a couple ago, Milo, I think it was talking about did he say he saw like an eye shine reflecting off the campfire?
He did, yeah. We were all kind of huddled around the fire with our backs to it, watching out because these things were around our camp that night. And he turned to talk to me. When he turned back, this thing was standing behind the tent, up and over, kind of glaring at him. And we had the fire built pretty high, so there was a lot of light. And the eye shine was kind of a reddish color, he said.
Now, Rich, what happened after this? Were there any instances that night?
We just kept driving. Matter of fact, I actually sped up a little bit. I was probably doing about 15 miles an hour at that time. And the guys in the back said they could see the eyes until we got far enough away that they kind of dissipated.
Wow.
And that's after the headlights were awesome.
So one of the things that I'm wondering is, if you're driving along the road and if somebody had stuck even like a sign or something like that with reflectors on it, you're going to know that just your intuition or whatever, your gut feeling is going to be, I would think that I would know the difference between reflectors. But I'm wondering, I guess here's the question. Was there something distinctive about those eyes that made you think animal or something alive as opposed to just reflectors?
We didn't think of any animal, and we knew it wasn't reflective because, like I said, there was no light shining on it anymore. And as we were driving off, they were still there. And as I said, as we drove by, they pivoted towards us, like watching us drive by.
Yeah, that's kind of the key element. When there's movement, then it's not a fixed object like reflectors on a post.
Now, Rich, did you get any other details besides the eyes? Did you perhaps see the face or any features of the body at all?
Nothing like that. Like I said, it was dark. It was really dark. No moon out that night. You're in the Cascades with lots of trees. But we did go back that next day. And because I knew the general area we were at, they're all little baby repot trees with about 100 yards out with a bunch of big growth. So it's almost like a clearing. And we looked around for different signs, and there was nothing out there. No reflectors, no signs, no posts, nothing out there.
Now, before this, were you and your friends believers in Bigfoot at all, or what did you know about the subject?
Well, everybody knows a little bit about Bigfoot. It's almost sight unseen. You got to see something to believe something. And that night, we still can't say what we've seen because we don't know, but we know it wasn't normal. And we still, as we get together every year and we talk about it every single year. What the heck was it?
Now, besides
an animal, most normal, your bear, your cougar, your elk or deer, their eyes aren't that color, and usually your headlights have to be on them.
Of the group of people that you were with, did you all see it, or just a couple of you?
Three out of 4 of us seen it.
Wow.
One guy was asleep.
Gotcha.
This was a question I wish, and I think last episode you guys had somebody on it. I think his name was John, who is the anthropologist.
Right. Yeah, John's an anthropologist.
I wonder if it'd be possible to maybe, at some point, maybe shoot an email or something and just see if he had he wasn't there, but just maybe get an opinion if he's ever heard of anything that might explain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send him the audio from this show.
Awesome. Okay. Hey, Rich, I've been near that area, but not right there. And not that it really matters, but I'm just curious, is that like Ponderosa, or do you know what are the main type of...
Yeah, lots of Ponderosa. Lots of Ponderosas.
A little piney, okay. Well, I looked at it on Google Earth, and I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but there's 2 things that were near, sort of in the vicinity, not right there, but sort of in the area. And I just found it interesting. One is there's a volcano there, or an old butte named Skookum Butte. And then down at the base of that, there's a creek called Skookum Creek. I just wonder why they named it that. Anyway.
Hard to say. Yeah.
Well, sometimes natives use that term sort of like, let's just say Skookum Meadow might have meant large meadow. But it could be these things also. Yeah,
so in other words, Skookum has, depending on the context, it may have different meanings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, Rich, that type of encounter is actually the most reported by far than any other type of sighting, yeah.
Yeah, Will, on that note, too, I was going to ask you later, but in your other interview that you sent me from a couple of years ago, that was one of the questions that they had, is what is the most common sighting? It's either right off the road or crossing the road.
Right. I think John Green's statistics showed it was something like 70+% of encounters were on or near a road.
Right.
So that brings up a question, interesting question, and that is, obviously they're pretty intelligent. They're not stupid, and they know when there's a truck, especially at nighttime, they see the headlights, long before somebody sees them. I'm just curious why they would be not bashful to be seen. They got to know that they're being seen. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but they don't care.
Well, it kind of depends on their disposition, and also you'd have to know, have some kind of information about the group that's in that area, if there's any past experiences with them and what the behaviors were like. Was it out there maybe deflecting attention from the rest of the group?
Okay, and that's something that I've heard a lot, is that when you see one, it's a display or something like you're deflecting attention.
Yeah, there's almost always more around than just the one.
Yeah, and Will, it's funny, that interviewer from a couple of years ago, he kind of implied, or he maybe theorized, that they do this, they hang around roads almost as a game, or they cross, because they can see cars coming. So if they wanted to cross the road, not in Rich's case, but if they wanted to cross the road, why not wait until the car passes? But they almost deliberately do it before the car is coming. And the interviewer kind of implied that this was kind of a game that they play, kind of a way of tricks us or taunting us. Or...
I don't think it's so much that. I think it's more, of course, first of all, the reason they're seen, there's a couple of reasons that they're seen most often on or near a road. Number one, that's our access way through a lot of these areas. So obviously that's the place you're going to see them more often than anywhere else. Another reason is roads and other throughways through forests are kind of a man-made game trail for wild animals. Wild animals are going to follow the path of least resistance. So, that's where they're going to be. That's where the game is. So, but when they come out and show themselves, it's a display for, like I said, I think it's mostly, an act as a distraction from where the other members of the group are.
Right.
Do you think that would also apply to a situation where you can't see them, but they're making like a whistling sound, something like that?
Well, usually if you can't see them and they're making noises, that's between members of a group for whatever reason, whatever it is they're doing.
Okay.
And that could be very well be about the human presence, probably hunting behavior, but it could be, some kind of signaling as a warning or what have you.
Okay, interesting. Was the kind of the encounter I had, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago, was about 20 yards away, and that's when I first contacted you. It just made this loud, one sharp whistle, and there's no other sound in the forest. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and we hear that a lot, and they're certainly going to know we're present long before, or if we ever know they're around.
Yeah, that's a little unnerving.
It is.
Their territory.
I mean, Will, are there other animals out there that could make, not necessarily whistle, but make a sound that resembles what we would call whistling? That could be mistaken sometimes.
Yeah,
for
actually, I've watched marmots whistle. But a Sasquatch is going to be different. It's going to be very loud, and you kind of have to be in an area where, and marmots don't see well, so if you're standing still, they'll come out of their holes and they do these things. You'll see them. We saw them up in the Olympic Mountains when you're doing that, but the Sasquatch, it's a whole different setting. Again, you have to know the context of what's going on in the location.
Right.
Well, was that everything, Rich, or?
Yeah, that's pretty much the story. And it's like I said, it's something we've been talking for the last 15 years. Every time we get together, still figuring out what in the world that was.
Well, it's very interesting.
Yeah, but Tom, didn't you say that Rich had a question for Will before, or?
Well, I think, well, the question was, definitely. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rich, but I think it had to do with.
No, go ahead.
How does this happen? Why do the eyes shine like that? And so I think that's the one.
Oh.
Well, the coloration really depends on the light source. Now, red is not one of the most common ones. Actually, I've seen eye shine a number of times, and typically it's kind of an amber color, but it depends on the light source.
I see. Yeah, because these are like almost a bright orange, like a fire, like a lighter, like
Sure.
Orange, yellow, bright. I mean, they stood out like a sore thumb. It just you couldn't miss it.
I need to bring somebody on who is pretty conversant with that particular topic, so we can kind of get some of those questions answered. But that's usually the case. It's the light source that causes the different coloration.
And the reason they stay lit up after it was amazing. It was a really amazing thing to see.
Yeah, we need to ask John about that, because I don't really have an answer for that.
Yeah, it is peculiar, and I just wondered if it had to do with like they're extremely efficient. And you're talking to the guy who knows the least about this stuff, so I'll just I have no idea.
Yeah, I think we should ask our anthropologist and get his input.
Awesome.
But I'm just happy because you did mention that other people have seen the same type of color and thing, and
Yes, absolutely.
that makes me feel a lot better.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, Sam, did you want to talk about your encounter?
Oh, okay. Well, I was 17, so, and I'm 63 now. It was late June. It was a full moon, and it was between 9 and 10. And there were 4 of us, my boyfriend, myself, and our 2 friends. And we lived in Salmon, Idaho. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with small towns, but there's not a lot to do. And you can only drive up and down Main Street so many times before you get totally bored. So this night we decided we were going to go up to the summit of 12 Mile. So we take off and we go up there, and we get to the top and we turn around, and we are on the mountain side of the road facing back down the mountain. So we're on the opposite side of the direction that we should have been going. And I'm sitting behind the driver, and he and I are both looking at my boyfriend who's on the outside of the car. I mean, we're all in the car, but he's on the right side of the car. And I see movement coming out of the wood. And this thing standing upright had to be 8 feet tall, easy. He gets to the side of the road and stopped, looked at us as we're looking at him, and he got down on all fours, crawled across the road, and when he got behind the car, he actually got down lower. Now, the windows are down on the car, and that's when I started smelling the smell that was, it. Skunk doesn't even come close to it. If you took a dirty sock and put it in a cooler and left it there for a year and opened that cooler, it might smell as bad. But then it got past the end of the car, and instead of standing up and going up the mountain, it kind of spider walked, like its arms were outstretched and its legs were kind of outstretched, and it was like crawling, kind of like Spider-Man up the mountain. My friend looked at me, and I looked at him. I said, "What the hell was that?" We don't know. He turns around, turns the car on, and we took off. Nobody else in the car saw it but him and I. And neither one of the other people in the car besides Bruce and I could smell it. It's like you guys had to have been absolutely no dead, because it smelled horrible. We had about a half mile down the road, and both Bruce, he stopped the car, and Bruce and I just started laughing. It was like, you know, when you've been in a situation where it's really, really scary, and you do this. That's what we did. So that's my story.
You know, it's interesting about the way it moved. It instantly took me to a situation with another witness. She's actually from Northern California, but at the time she lived in New Mexico. And her daughter watched one of these things cross the highway in front of their car, and it moved just the way you described it.
That's amazing. It was almost like he didn't want us to see him. And it, I mean, his shoulders were above the back of the car, you know, and he got down low enough. He had to be his belly when he got behind the car. And it wasn't that big of a car. It was a Mach 1 Mustang, so it wasn't a big car. It just, and it stuck with me all these years. I mean, I can smell it, I can see it as clear as if it was happening right now.
That's incredible.
Sam, did you get a look at the face at all?
Yes.
What did it resemble? More of a man or an ape, would you say?
Well, the face was hairy, but there were definite, I mean, there was a nose, definite nose. Like, I would say that it looked more humanoid than it did gorilla. I mean, to me, it didn't look human, like, like it was somebody in a ghillie suit.
Right.
But it definitely was more humanistic than not.
And what time of day? Was this at day or night?
It was at night, but it was a full moon.
Okay, so you did get a good look, though.
Oh,
so you
yeah.
couldn't possibly mistake it for anything else.
Away from me.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it up close and personal. I mean, I could have reached out and touched it.
Wow.
He was so cool.
Did you ever have any other encounters?
No.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
Did you ever hear anybody talk about it in that area?
I hadn't heard anybody talk about it. And the group that I was with, my boyfriend and I broke up because of it.
Oh, wow.
He said there's no way that we saw what we saw. It wasn't a bear. I've been out in the woods my entire life. I've come up close and personal with bear before. This was not a grizzly bear. This was not a brown bear. This was not a black bear. This was a Bigfoot. And, the other guy that saw it with me, we talked about it once, and he said, I never talk about this again. It shook him up totally. And I've been a believer all my life. I mean, especially after I saw the newscast when they showed the Patterson-Gimli photos on the news. Mm-hmm. Around my living room, see, Dad, see, I told you.
Well, very interesting accounts.
Yeah, Sam, I was going to ask, in terms of color, was it all black, or was it maybe an orangish, like a brown color?
It was a dark brown.
Mm-hmm.
It was it wasn't like caramel, but darker. It wasn't like a grizzly coat brown. It was darker than.
Mm-hmm.
And it was massive.
Well, did Rich or Sam, do you have any questions for me or Brian, or?
No, I'm just you answered a lot. I'm happy that other people witnessed the same thing that I've seen with the eyes. Kind of puts me at ease.
Well, you're not alone, that's for sure.
Of wondering for so long.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone.
Yeah, well, I was going to say what Rich is talking about seems to be very common. It seems to be kind of an outlet or a release or a relief to tell your story and realize that you're not alone.
And I think that's a problem a lot of witnesses have, is they think that, number one, either people are going to make fun of them, or that no one else has experienced what they have, making it something too incredible for people to believe. And that's not the case.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
I've never worried about what people thought about me. I tell my tale, and if they believe me, they believe me, and if they don't, well, that's their loss. I know what I saw, and I would give my eyes to be able to see it again.
I think more people should have that outlook. You know, shouldn't care about what people think. You know what you saw. You saw it, they didn't, so why does their opinion matter?
Exactly.
And Will, a third thing to that is, number one, as you say, they're afraid of ridicule. Number two, they don't think anybody's going to believe them. And I would add a third thing to that as well, which is that maybe they themselves sometimes don't believe what they saw. They think, oh my gosh, I just had a panic attack or something. What I saw couldn't possibly be real. I must be crazy.
I've talked to so many people that have said something along those lines. They'll see it, and then they'll ask themselves, did I really see that? And they just question themselves over and over and over again, even though it was right there in front of their eyes.
I did the same thing. If there wasn't two other guys in the back of the truck that seen the same thing, I would have thought I was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, folks, if there's nothing else, we'll wrap this segment up. I really appreciate Tom and Sam and Rich, you guys coming on and telling your accounts. I think it's very important for people to talk about the things that they've seen and experienced. It really helps other people.
Cool. Thanks.
Well, glad to be on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.